I'm Michiel Hoogeveen. I'm an MEP for a Dutch conservative liberal party called JA21. It was only founded 2 years ago, in the year 21. And I've been an MEP since, I've been in the parliament since 2019. But I was an assistant to my predecessor called Dirk-Jan Epping, and he was elected in the national parliament. And hence I got elected for the European Parliament. So I'm here for a little bit more than 2 years now. I'm mostly focused on economic issues. So I'm a vice chair of the Economic and Monetary Committee, but I'm also a member of the International Trade Committee. So I mostly focus on, I think, the areas where the EU should focus on. And that's mostly on trade, that's mostly on economics. I think that's the original idea behind the European Union. That's why it was founded. Because free trade, it fosters prosperity for all the people, it brings jobs, it brings wealth. And I think that was really the original idea behind the European Union. So that's why I chose these specific topics to focus on in during my mandate. Before I went into politics, I worked, I'm originally a political scientist. I worked as a freelance geopolitical analyst, mostly on Northeast Asia, more specifically on North Korea. I visited the country multiple times. So, yeah, the most authoritarian regime on earth. It was a fascinating topic for me as a political scientist to study. During my time as a freelancer, I also worked, I had a regular job, and I worked as in a custodian bank, securities depository bank. And later I switched to a company called KPMG. And at this company, I saw that the amount of regulatory burdens on our companies, on our small and medium-sized businesses, was getting out of control. And most of these regulations are coming from Brussels. And I saw that for the larger multinational, transnational corporations, this was not really that big of a problem in order to comply with all these rules and regulations. But I really saw that the big problem lies with our SMEs. They are not able to catch up with the incredible amount of rules and regulations that are coming, increasingly rules and regulations that are coming from Brussels. And I must say that since I went into politics, I've become even more pessimistic, because in the house that's called the European Parliament, they tend to think of new things. If there's something that they don't like, if there's something happening in the world that they think should be controlled, they put it into a law, and they say, well, all our companies should comply. Why shouldn't they? I'll give some examples of that later. So that's why I got into politics. First, I was a member of a political party called the VVD, which has been the ruling party in the Netherlands for more than 12 years now. But I ended my membership of that party during the Euro crisis, when our Prime Minister promised us that he would solve the Greek sovereign debt crisis, and he promised us that the Greeks would pay it back, and he came up with all kinds of solutions. And I never really believed that was the original idea behind the Economic and Monetary Union. So that's why I ended my membership with the VVD, and then I was basically politically homeless. There was not really a party in the Netherlands that was really aiming for, on the one hand, sovereignty, but on the other hand, not a party that has given up. So in the Netherlands, we would call them Nexiteers. For our British friends, we had the Brexiteers. In the Netherlands, we have the Nexiteers. And on the contrary, in Britain, the Nexit is not really a very attractive subject. So you have the fringe parties on the other hand, and the mainstream political parties in the center on the other hand, and there was nothing really center-right. And that's what JA21 steps in. We are a common sense party. We believe that the European Union is of great benefit for the Netherlands. We believe in the common market. We want to contribute to the common market, but we don't believe in all these bureaucratic rules and regulations coming from Brussels. I just touched upon it briefly, but the things I'm seeing right now coming from the Parliament, they want, I mean, we already have very stringent rules on accounting, on fiscal rules and regulations. But they come up with all kinds of new things. You touched upon it briefly. The green regulation, which is coming from Brussels, the digital regulation, the privacy regulation that's coming from Brussels, the gender regulation, they're now working on it. So we need to prove that we are paying, the equal work, equal pay directive. That every company needs to prove that every man and every woman works the same amount of hours, gets the same amount of money paid in their hourly wage. They have to report it, obviously. Companies have to comply. They have to hire in auditors or consultants. Another file I'm working on right now is forced labor, where companies have to prove they're basically guilty until proven otherwise. So you are trading in certain products, then you must be trading in forced labor. If you don't, well, prove it. So that's really the way people in Brussels think. And they don't think with a business mindset. They don't think with a common sense mindset. They think they can regulate everything from top to bottom. And that's also what brings us to one of the files I'm also working on in the Econ Committee, and that is on the digitalization of payments. I'm a rapporteur on a file called instant payments. If we look at the European Common Market, in the Netherlands itself, we have a system. If I transfer my money to a Dutch friend, it's instantly transferred to one another's bank account. But within the common market, if I would transfer, where do you live? France. Belgium. Well, Belgium. If I would transfer money from my Dutch bank account to your Belgian account, then it would still take 2 or 3 working days. So we are now working on a project that really makes these transfers instant, and I think that's really some added value of the European Union. We already saw this with the roaming on the mobile phones. I mean, these are things that people are actually happy about when it comes from the EU. So that's one of the files I'm working on, and then the other file, and that's really connected to the instant payments. That's also something I've been busy with. It's not assigned to me yet, because the proposal is still at the European Commission, but that's the digital currency, so the digital euro. And I've been following this project ever since I worked in banking. I followed the rise of Bitcoin. When Bitcoin was introduced, it truly revolutionized the world of finance. For the people who don't know what Bitcoin is a decentralized payment system, which really is secure, it's fast, it's cheap, and it doesn't need any financial intermediaries such as a bank or a central bank. So really revolutionized the world of finance, and in theory, it could create a lot of freedom for people, because you're no longer connected, you're no longer obliged to be connected to banks, or you're no longer reliant on the policies of the central bank. What we've seen, that they're grinding money printing press policies have spiraled inflation out of control. So it offered a tremendous amounts of freedom, but it also, with that development, also came obviously the dark side of what the crypto community or the Bitcoin community has come with, and that's money laundering, that's criminal activities that were really propagated by the use of Bitcoin. So what do they do in Brussels? They think, well, this is a really promising technology. Why don't we embrace it? And they embraced it via what is now called the Digital Euro project, or what is also called a central bank digital currency. And they are currently experimenting with it, and we have regular dialogues with the European Central Bank. Its program manager on the Digital Euro is Fabio Panetta. And he comes to the European Parliament to give talks about where this is going, the digital euro, and why is he having this project. And this is really where it comes down, where I asked the question to him multiple times, why do we need a digital euro? Because as I said, I'm already working on the Instant Payments Directive. The digitalization of finance is already there. So what are the benefits of a digital euro if you have Bitcoin, but it still relies on these centralized institutions, such as a central bank or a financial intermediary? And the question, and he answered the question basically by saying, well, we need it because they are doing it in China. In China, they are currently developing they already introduced the E1, the digital renminbi, and the Chinese government is really trying to push this to their own people by making sure that people use these digital currencies. Why? Well, and that is basically what a Chinese official said at the IMF in October last year when I was there. He said the main benefit of a digital currency is programmability. What is programmability? Is that, for example, if you have something like food stamps. Food stamps, well, in the Netherlands, there have been quite some scandals with subsidies that were given to people and they were not used for the designated for the things they were meant to be spent on. And with these programmability, you could just say, well, I give you a certain amount of programmable digital money that you can only spend on food or on solar panels. So that's really what they're doing in China. And the European Central Bank told me that they are now moving towards this digital euro because of China, because they think it's an attack on the reserve world currency. But I also asked them, do you want this programmability included in the digital euro? And he said no. He promised me that was not the case. So and I asked him all sorts of other questions concerning privacy, and he basically confirmed that this was not the case. So then again, my question was, why do we need a digital euro? Why do we need it? And that question hasn't been answered to me fully. And I agree that they are experimenting with this technology. I mean, you should always, it's always in business, I've learned that you have the famous Kodak moment. If you remember the old cameras from Kodak, they didn't move along with the digital cameras. So they in the end, they went bust. So I also always believe that you should embrace technology, experiment with technology. But they are now moving ahead by actually introducing this digital euro. And I think if the European Central Bank doesn't want to have all these so-called benefits that they are now having in China, then what's the use case of a digital euro? And I think it's a solution looking for a problem which can only confuse people, which can only confuse the financial sector. But what is this exactly? So I said to the European Central Bank, okay, experiment with it, talk about it, do with it whatever you want, but put it on ice. Don't introduce this into legislation.